Peter Gabriel has released two different mixes of the same album, the Bright Side and the Dark Side mix. But how do they compare? Let's find out, shall we? Welcome, classic rock fans, to a video concerning once more Peter Gabriel and this wonderful new album. If you haven't checked out my review, there was a card just up there. This album feels like a manifesto for life, the ending and the beginning of. And an interesting conflict is explored between the organic realities of life and love and the role of technology. As Rolling Stone state in their excellent article, Peter Gabriel in wizard beard and sci-fi tunic, he's come to encapsulate in sound and mindset the organic mysticism of seemingly magical new technologies. It's all about these two different mixes. The differences are subtle and nuanced. So I listened to the Bright Side mix about 8 or 9 times since getting the album. I absolutely adore it, to be honest with you. And last night I listened to the Dark Side mix to try and extrapolate the differences between the two. As I said, the differences are subtle and nuanced. Would I be able to pass the blindfold test? I very much doubt it, really. But obviously you get two different mixes by two different producers, with probably Peter Gabriel overseeing the proceedings like some huge prog Cheshire cat. So overall with this review I want to discuss how the Dark Side mix is different from the Bright Side mix. So we start off with Panopticon. I think it feels a little sparser than the Bright Side mix. The bass and instrumentation seems more prominent at the start, with a little bit more reverb, I think, on the chants that open the song. And it's got that wonderful anthemic catchy chorus, during which it sounds as if Gabriel's voice is just a fraction lower in the mix. This allows us to enjoy the delicate guitar texturing we get on this song. Then we get The Court, which is Gabriel's dig at cancel culture. It feels more stripped, I think. The vocal sound is not as lavish, less affected, which tends to accentuate the more percussive elements of this number. And the Justice is Blind section, my favourite section of this number, is slightly dampened down, I think, bringing to the fore the female vocals and some of the chiming instrumentation. Playing for Time, there doesn't seem to be much difference between the Bright and Dark Side mix on this. The funeral march at the start that's chimed out solemnly on the piano as it should be seems a little bit quieter, I think. As I said, there's not a lot of difference between the two mixes here. This does feel more naked. It's like the despectrized version of The Long and Winding Road. I.O., another one of my favourites on this album. The vocals are less affected, the chimes of the guitar more prominent. And it has a live feel. I think a lot of the tracks on this Dark Side mix feel more live in the studio than the Bright Side mix. Four Kinds of Horses, which is Gabriel's meditation on religion and terrorism with a stunningly sympathetic backing to it. Reminds me of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. The bass at the start of this one sounds incredible, even more so I think in the Dark Side mix than the Bright Side mix. Feels very ambient and soundscapey, and I don't know if I'm correct here, but it seems more drawn out than the Bright Side mix. And Road to Joy is another wonderful anthemic number on here. A wonderful example of Brian Eno's programming. I think the bass and synth textures really announce themselves with this mix. And at the intro to the chorus, there feels like a kind of a slightly electronic burr or murmur, which I'm not sure if I heard during the Bright Side mix. I could be wrong there though. Overall, these mixes sound starker, I think, with more clatter and the synth and bass textures accentuated. So much as just a simple song about getting old and addresses our mortality. Reminds me a little bit of that number on the David Gilmour album, Rattle That Lock. I think it's Faces of Stone. Faces of Stone, it was addressing his mother's Alzheimer's or her deterioration with Alzheimer's. Something that's quite close to my own heart, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, they're both meditations on mortality. This is a fantastic orchestral arrangement, an incredibly beautiful, sensitive piece of music. And I'd go as far as say one of the highlights of the album, many highlights in fact. But to be honest with you, I can hear virtually no difference between the two mixes on this one. Olive Tree, it's a wonderful song about the joy of living, I think. I love the horns on this. It's a song that just brightens my mood when I listen to it. And I say this quite a lot, I've said this quite a lot as I've gone through these mixes. On here again, the bass feels a little bit more prominent and the vocals not as prominent, I think. We're not talking Michael Stipe here. They're just slightly quieter in the mix to accentuate the surrounding instrumentation. There's overall a nice balance, a nice equilibrium between the purr of Gabriel's voice and the supporting musical arrangement. Love Can Heal is an absolute delight, so its contrast with the soul sounds of the Olive Tree. There is a shift with this number to something more experimental and atmospheric. Overall, I'd have to say with the Dark Side mix, it's the sound of the keyboard and strings that are more pronounced, I think. This Is Home is another interesting one. As I read somewhere, it's Gabriel's take on traditional Motown, where he attempts to do his best, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Overall, I think this song sounds a little bit brighter, despite rather ironically being the Dark Side mix. Greater emphasis on the percussive elements, and the female vocal that accompanies Peter's voice during the chorus feels a little bit more prominent. And still, maybe this is the album's epic prog number, certainly a tribute to Gabriel's mother. The closing orchestral section is absolutely wonderful on this track. I love the strings at the start of this, and the mix feels more ambient. It feels softer, I think, than the Bright Side mix. But there doesn't seem to be a world of difference between the two. And Live and Let Live is about forgiveness and acceptance. An important message there for the batshit bonkers, polarised world that we now live in. The lead vocals are quite prominent in the mix before we get what I call the Beatlesy section with the double tracking and the stab of strings. There's more nuance, I think, here between the individual vocals, and there was a chime of guitars at the end which feels more accentuated, as do the horns in fact. Anyway, there you go. That's my take on the two mixes, the two Peter Gabriel mixes. I'd love to know which one you prefer and why. If you're new to this channel, please do click like. It makes a huge difference to the YouTube algorithm. And subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. Also check the notification bell so you get notified of any future uploads. And if you've got a moment, there's a few links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Review. It's always much appreciated. Anyway, I'll leave you with my closing salvo, which is hope you're well, staying safe, and of course, keep listening.